strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching GRAVITAS with me, Raisha Sehgal. Our cover story tonight, it looks like the Ukraine-Russia war has entered a new and a volatile phase, with both the sides escalating tensions on multiple fronts. Ukraine accusing Russia of amassing troops on the front line, and US scolding Russia of stoking World War III fears. The question now is, what form will the Ukraine-Russia peace talks take? Also on the show, we will tell you, despite tough talks on sanctions, the European Union is still hooked on Russian energy and raw materials, and how Europe has spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine. Finally, India is looking to revive its 1971 war air base in Tripura. This, as reports say that China is helping Bangladesh in upgrading its air base in an area which is just 20 kilometers from the Indian border. All that and a lot more lined up for you on GRAVITAS tonight. Let's get you started. Deadly drone strikes, intense battles along the front lines, and diplomatic moves from Washington to Berlin to Moscow. Just when it seemed the Russia-Ukraine war might be nearing a resolution, it has now entered a new, more volatile phase. And now, Russian President Vladimir Putin is demanding written guarantees from the West to stop NATO expansion eastward and ease sanctions on Russia as a part of any peace deal with Ukraine. According to Reuters, Putin also wants Ukraine to remain neutral and for frozen Russian assets in the West to be addressed. These are his demands if peace talks are to continue. That's from the Russian side as of now. Well, earlier, US President Donald Trump, who has been pushing for an end to the war, warned the Russian leader is playing with fire by refusing to talk ceasefire. Putin claims He's working on a peace proposal but will not accept any deal that does not meet Russia's core demands. And what does Ukraine say in all of this? It insists NATO membership must stay on the table and that it needs stronger Western security guarantees to deter future attacks. So both Russia and Ukraine are escalating tensions on multiple fronts, accusing each other of drone strikes. And now, Ukraine fears Russia is preparing for a summer offensive. Ukraine's emergency services say that one person was killed and 8 others were injured in a Russian drone attack overnight on settlements in Kharkiv. Firefighters were seen battling flames at a warehouse south of the regional capital. And while Kharkiv burns, Moscow faced its own attack. Russian officials say that their air defenses intercepted around 100 Ukrainian drones across multiple regions, including a swarm heading for Moscow. Other videos circulating on social media showed the aftermath in Zelenograd, which is Moscow's exclave. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyan confirmed the attack on Zelenograd through Telegram.
Мы там стояли, как первый раз въебало, мы аж подпрыгнули, блядь.
Это просто пиздец.
Well, active combat also continues along several points of the front line. Russia's defense ministry has accused Kyiv of targeting civilian infrastructure inside Russia using Western-made drones and rockets. In retaliation, Moscow says it has launched cluster strikes on Ukrainian military depots, air bases and radar stations, even targeting foreign mercenary outposts. Meanwhile, Ukraine's general staff reported dozens of active battles with the most intense fighting in Pokrovsk. Ukrainian foreign minister claimed that Russia launched nearly 1,000 drones and missiles in the past 3 days, which he says is a proof that Moscow is not interested in any kind of peace. In Ukraine also, there's now growing concern about a possible new Russian offensive. Western media reports citing Ukrainian military officials and experts say that Russia is expected to launch a major offensive this summer, and that is in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. And that would not be surprising. We say that because the capture of Donetsk in its entirety has been a priority for Putin since the war started in 2022. In September that year, Putin had declared the whole of Donetsk, along with 3 other Ukrainian regions, to be a part of the Russian Federation, accompanying the main push into Donetsk, of which Russia now controls about 70%. The Kremlin reportedly plans to carry out smaller attacks along the border of Ukraine's northeast Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Ukraine's National Guard has confirmed that Russia may be preparing new attacks in Kharkiv. Ukraine's Chief of Staff of the 13th Karthia Brigade said that Russian forces are trying to move closer to the contact line, but they have so far failed to carry out assaults. The result of all of this, what is happening on the battlefield? Well, more pressure on Ukraine's already overstretched frontline troops and an advantage to Russian troops. The warnings over the offensive has already begun, and they come as the US brokered peace process has limped along. Meetings so far have been inconclusive. Ukraine has called for a 30-day ceasefire, but Moscow, it seems, has certain non-negotiables for the temporary truce. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warns of a major Russian force amassing in Ukraine's northeast. Zelensky said that over 50,000 Russian troops, including elite units, have been positioned near Sumy, which is the region bordering Russia's Kursk. He believes the Kremlin aims to carve out a 10-kilometer buffer zone. While Moscow captured several border villages recently, Zelensky says that the Ukrainian forces pushed them back by 4 kilometers. That's near Kostyantynivka. Still, amid the fighting, Zelensky says that he remains open to any kind of peace talks, even a three-way meeting with US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Not just that, he also warned against the US leaving the Ukraine peace process, something which Washington has threatened if talks stall. The fate of Ukraine is also shaking European politics now. Recently, Germany and other European allies have lifted restrictions on the range of weapons being sent to Ukraine. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has voiced support for Ukraine's right to strike targets inside Russia, deep inside Russia. Of course, the Kremlin responded sharply. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova dismissed Merz's remarks as self-promotion and said that German weapons will not change the course of Russia's so-called special military operation. Even so, high-level dialogue continues. Zelensky arrived in Berlin today, where he met with Chancellor Merz, following up on a brief exchange in Kyiv. Germany is not expected to announce new weapons, opting instead for what it calls strategic ambiguity. As far as Russia is concerned now, the Kremlin says the next round of direct talks with Ukraine will be announced soon. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov asserted that the neutral status of Ukraine remains one of Russia's key demands in the peace negotiations.
Speaking about Ukraine's NATO membership, I will remind that the neutral, non-aligned, and nuclear-free status of Ukraine has been solemnly proclaimed in this country's Declaration of Independence adopted in 1991. This specific obligation, namely the proclamation of the neutral, non-aligned, and nuclear-free status, forever made it possible to recognize Ukraine as an independent state by the Russian Federation and all the other members of the international community.
For now, the question is, what form will the next round of Ukraine-Russia talks take? Or will they happen at all? Well, a new threat has emerged in the skies over Ukraine. Russia's latest cruise missile, the S-8000 Banderol, is making headlines for its elusive nature and devastating impact. Our next story takes a closer look at how Ukraine's battlefront shifts with new missile threats. Take a look.
Russian forces have pounded cities from Kharkiv to Odessa, launching hundreds of drones and missiles in relentless waves. Civilian infrastructure is in ruins. Air raid sirens never stop. The intensity is off the charts. In recent weeks, Ukrainian forces have faced a surge in missile and drone attacks. Ukraine says that Russia is using a new type of missile, the S-8000 Banderol cruise missile, developed by Russia's Kronstadt group. The Banderol is a lightweight, low-cost missile designed for mass production and deployment. Its range of up to 700 kilometers allows it to strike deep into Ukrainian territory, targeting critical infrastructure and military installations. Dubbed the Frankenstein missile, it combines foreign components into a deadly package that's proving difficult to intercept. Ukrainian commanders are sounding the alarm about a new threat. The Banderol missile. This is no ordinary cruise missile. It's a hybrid, part drone, part missile, launched from Russian Orion drones or helicopters. And it's designed to slip past defenses and strike deep. Russia's message is clear. Nowhere in Ukraine is safe. As the barrages intensify, the Banderol missile stands out as a new terror in the skies, one that could tip the balance on the battlefield. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The European Union spent more on Russian energy imports last year than it sent as military aid to Ukraine. Now, despite loud rhetoric and claims of imposing sanctions against Moscow, the fact remains that European countries continue to remain heavily dependent on Russian energy and raw materials. And the figures alone tell the full story. According to a report by German publication Bild, this year alone, Russia is expected to collect approximately $22.7 billion from selling energy and other commodities to the European Union. And last year, Europe spent around $26 billion on Russian energy. In comparison, Europe committed around $24 billion in military aid to Kyiv in 2024. While the European Union wants to champion Kyiv's cause on the diplomatic front, their energy payments to Russia clearly tells a different story. In fact, back in March, US President Donald Trump had told the US Congress that Europe spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine.
Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine, by far. Think of that. They've spent more buying Russian oil and gas than they have defending.
According to reports, Moscow's total revenue from oil, gas, coal and uranium could reach as high as $263 billion this year. Even though Europe has reduced its dependency, the region still sources around 19% of its gas from Russia, down from roughly 45% before 2022. Earlier this month, in an official release, the European Union said that it will end its dependency on Russian energy by stopping the import of Russian gas and oil and phasing out Russian nuclear energy. But in the same release, it also admitted, and I'm quoting here, in 2024, the EU saw a rebound in Russian gas imports, unquote. Further highlighting Europe's complex energy entanglement with Russia. At the start of this month, EU's Energy Commissioner Dan Jorgensen said that the Union aims to eliminate all Russian gas imports by the end of 2027.
We ask member states to make mandatory national plans for phasing out Russian gas, nuclear fuel and oil. These plans need to be ready by the end of this year. We ban all imports of Russian gas under new contracts and existing spot contracts taking effect as of the end of this year. We ban remaining imports of Russian pipeline gas and LNG under existing long-term contracts by the end of 2027.
But the question remains, will the European Union actually follow through on big promises to Ukraine? Or will it continue to opt for economic comfort? Just when you thought it could not get worse, the unthinkable has happened in Gaza. A day after Israeli forces opened fire on desperate crowds at an aid distribution site, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, backed by Israel and the US, has temporarily halted aid operations due to disorder. In a place where starvation is already widespread, the only functioning aid line has also now been paused. On Tuesday, at least 3 Palestinians were killed and 46 wounded. That's after Israeli troops shot at civilians. For what? Trying to access food. We told you about this last night on the show. But while the world watched in horror, something else happened. Something that went largely unnoticed. while Gazans were being fired at for trying to eat. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu openly rubbished the charge that people were starving in Gaza. According to reports, Bibi claimed Israeli troops pictured, photographed thousands of Palestinian detainees, and according to him, none looked, and I'm quoting him here, emaciated. He insists that Israel has been providing essential food, water and medicine since the beginning of the war. Of course, it's made without offering any proof. This despite mounting warnings from the United Nations as well as global bodies that there is acute food insecurity in Gaza. This despite a full Israeli blockade imposed in March, justified by claims that Hamas was hijacking supplies, claims which Hamas has clearly denied. Earlier this month, a global hunger monitor warned that 500,000 people in Gaza are on the brink of starvation. The 11-week siege by Israel has pushed Gaza to the edge. UN-run bakeries have shut down due to lack of fuel. Food prices are skyrocketing and malnutrition is rising. Just take a look at these visuals, images from Gaza. In Khan Yunis, displaced Palestinians are voicing anger and despair over the US-backed aid program.
Of course it failed, because there were injustice and humiliation. On top of starvation, more starvation too. The people felt humiliated, so I would take the aid, and with it, I take a humiliation. This is not acceptable, and not everyone go. Not everyone feel they can walk and arrive. There are people who can't walk this distance on foot. There are people with disabilities. There are people broken. There are elderly people. There is a woman who doesn't have a caregiver. How would they arrive to get these aid?
Should we go to Al-Mawasi to get the aid being distributed? Should we go to Rafah to get them? No one has money to take a car or anything, and we can't bear this. This is unfair. We are thrown in schools among the rubbish, disease, flies and dirt. We are thrown with our hunger and thirst. We can't enjoy a sleep. We spend the entire day thinking the thought ruined us.
Meanwhile, the head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees condemned Israel's aid model, calling it a waste of resources and a distraction from atrocities.
The model of aid distribution proposed by Israel does not align with core humanitarian principle. It will deprive large part of Gaza, the highly vulnerable people, of desperately needed assistance. I believe it is a waste of resources and a distraction from atrocities.
Even as a trickle of aid resumes, Israel's military campaign rages on in Gaza. Israeli strikes have killed 3,901 Palestinians since the last ceasefire ended. Israel insists that it's only targeting Hamas fighters, and Hamas denies using civilians as cover. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says it has distributed 8,000 food boxes, which is around equal to 462,000 meals. That's since Israel loosened the blockade last week. Israel also claimed that its model helps screen recipients and exclude anyone with links to Hamas. The US has also defended this approach. US State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce brushed off criticism as complaints about style. But the United Nations and major international NGOs have boycotted the GHF, accusing it of undermining neutrality, insisting that the aid to Gaza must be distributed independently and based on need and not politics. Meanwhile, the reality on the ground, the amount of aid getting in is a fraction of what's needed. The UN estimates that 500 to 600 trucks per day are required, but Gaza is nowhere near that. As the dust settled from Tuesday's shootings, Gaza today buried its dead. Mourners gathered to lay to rest those killed in Israeli strikes. At least 15 Palestinians died in fresh attacks on Wednesday, including 8 members of a single family. Since the war started, Israel's onslaught has killed more than 54,000 people, reducing large swathes of the Gaza Strip to rubble.
The people of Gaza and the people of Palestine love life like any people in the world. We want to live with dignity. What is happening to the Gaza Strip is unacceptable. The Gaza Strip is starving, besieged, and being exterminated. Every day, there is blood.
Meanwhile, in Paris today, pro-Palestinian demonstrators and humanitarian groups made a dramatic appeal for international action on Gaza. They turned one of the city's most iconic fountains red to symbolize the bloodshed in Gaza. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators dyed the water red to demand an end to what they called a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Wielding red smoke flares and banners that read "Ceasefire now," they called on their president, Emmanuel Macron, as well as global leaders to act urgently.
We represent humanitarian international solidarity, human rights defense, and environmental organizations. And today, we would like to express our deepest indignation and anger because of the indescribable, inhumane situation that is happening in Gaza Strip. We have symbolically come to the Fountain of Innocence in the heart of Paris, where we have dyed the water blood red to symbolize this indignation.
The demonstration is the latest in a wave of global demonstrations over the worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza. The demonstration was organized by several major NGOs, including Greenpeace, Oxfam, Amnesty International, and Médecins du Monde. They say Israel's recent easing of its 11-week blockade has done little. As the conflict continues, demonstrators today made it clear words are no longer enough. Let's now tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. From the United States of America, we will tell you how the Trump administration is planning to implement a stricter vetting procedure for international students applying for a student visa. We'll also tell you how Elon Musk's Mars dream has hit another wall after SpaceX Starship crashed and exploded over the Indian Ocean. And finally, we'll tell you about the Orb, which is a project undertaken by OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and verifies if you're a human or not. India has initiated a major step on its eastern frontier and appears to be reviving a long dormant airfield in Tripura. A move that is not just calculated but also signals strategic intent, because there are reports of China helping Bangladesh in redeveloping a World War II era airbase in Lal Munirahat district, which is located just 20 kilometers from the Indian border. Officials from the Airports Authority of India reportedly visited Kailash Shahar Airport in Tripura's Unakoti district on Monday. They examined the terrain, infrastructure, studied land availability, and assessed visibility factors, marking the first tangible step in bringing the defunct airstrip back to life after lying idle for more than 30 years. Now, besides being located close to the Indian border, Lal Munirahat is also located close to the Siliguri corridor. It's a narrow neck of land that connects the rest of India to the northeast, also known as India's Chicken's Neck. Lalmunirahat is also strategically located close to Jalpaiguri and Cooch Behar districts of West Bengal. So by reviving Kailash Sheher, India is not just reinforcing its eastern flank but also ensuring all measures are in place against a potential Chinese footprint that is alarmingly close following reports of China helping Bangladesh in reviving the World War II airbase. The Indian Armed Forces reportedly deployed S-400 air defense missile system in the region, while a squadron of Rafale fighter jets was already stationed at Hashimara Air Base alongside MiG aircrafts. The Kailash Sheher airfield was extensively used in the 1971 war. It not only supported the Indian Air Force but also reportedly provided the very first base for Operation Kilo Flight. Kilo Flight was the code name for the Mukti Bahini Combat Aviation Formation that used civilian planes refitted for combat and reconnaissance missions during the war. The same unit later laid the foundation of the Bangladesh Air Force. And today, the stakes are different but just as high. Tripura currently depends on capital Agartala's airport for everything: civilian travel, emergency operations and supply chains. And restarting Kailash Sheher offers a crucial option. It strengthens regional connectivity and sharpens India's military readiness in a sensitive zone. India is watching the skies and the map with a close eye. Well, the Trump administration has paused student visa interviews. US is now implementing new measures to screen and vet the social media profiles of international students. Our next report explores the red lines drawn by the Trump administration for the foreign students who wish to study in America. Take a look.
The message from Washington is blunt: zero tolerance. The Trump administration has slammed the brakes on new student visa interviews worldwide, signaling a sweeping crackdown on foreign students. The new rules are clear, and the consequences are severe deportation, visa revocation, and a permanent black mark on record. The suspension of visa processing came as Harvard students protested after the government said it intended to cancel all remaining financial contracts. Harvard students are calling the move an attack by President Trump on the prestigious institution.
I'm graduating this week, and so I think, well, not only this is my last week as a Harvard student, but it's a very important week as all my international friends and peers and professors and researchers are at risk and being threatened of, being deported.
Freedom of speech and due process, these are the foundations of the American system. These are the foundations of a free society. But Donald Trump is attacking these freedoms because they get in the way of his authoritarian takeover. This is what authoritarians do.
The U.S. government plans to ramp up vetting of the social media profiles of international applicants to U.S. universities. There are 4 major criteria. Skipping classes or having poor attendance could cause deportation. Dropout or change of program without notifying the school can lead to cancellation of visa. Overstay on visa or taking up unauthorized work can affect the visa of the student. Also, most importantly, post anything questionable on social media could cancel the visa.
So every sovereign country has a right to know who's trying to come in, why they want to come in, who they are, what they've been doing, and at least hopefully within that framework, determine what they will be doing while they're here. So that's nothing new.
Over 1 million international students study in the U.S., with India leading at 331,602, followed by China at 2,77,398, and Europe, 90,600 students. These students inject nearly $50 billion into the U.S. economy each year. But the new advisory means even the best and brightest aren't immune. Beijing urged Washington to safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of international students, including those from China. The sweeping U.S. measures have resulted in foreign governments moving to snap up affected students, with Japan and Hong Kong urging local universities to take in more international applicants. the evolving landscape necessitates heightened awareness and compliance from international students. In this new era, digital footprints are as consequential as academic transcripts.
Shifting our focus in what can be called a major crackdown against global spy tech. Indian regulators in recent weeks have issued a series of guidelines. It's a new set of security rules that require manufacturers of CCTV cameras to submit materials for assessment in government labs. And this comes in the wake of growing government distrust, especially on Chinese electronics, often found to be tampered with spyware. In a fresh notice, the union government has made it mandatory that the manufacturers of surveillance gear working in India submit hardware, software and source code for testing before they can sell their goods in the market. While the notice addresses the tech industry in general, it's aimed at CCTV camera makers in particular, made or importers since April 9th. The Chinese manufacturers like HIK Vision, Xiaomi and Dahua, South Korea's Hanawa and American firm Motorola Solutions will all now be hit hard by this measure. Most definitely, the security testing policy poses a big blow to the Chinese electronic industry, which is the biggest CCTV camera suppliers to India. This has now sparked industry warnings of supply disruptions. Moreover, it adds to the string of disputes between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's administration and foreign companies over regulatory issues. But is the government wrong to raise this alarm and introduce such regulatory measures? Not quite. As per a government official, New Delhi's approach of increased vigilance and monitoring of Chinese tech and gadgets is primarily driven by China's sophisticated surveillance capabilities, while many are calling it protectionism. In the light of vulnerabilities with video footage transferred to servers abroad detected earlier, there are legitimate grounds of concern here when it comes to personal or national security. More so because some of these gear often serves as a dual purpose, bringing with it the risk of espionage. Some of these cameras are also planted in drones used for surveillance purposes, which are efficient for use both during day and night time. That's also making them difficult to be traced back. Only last year, Israeli operatives detonated planned blasts in pagers targeting Hezbollah in Lebanon, post which the Indian government issued a directive to weed out Chinese vendors from the supply chains of all forms of surveillance equipment. As a part of its security strategy, the government was set to fast-track the implementation of guidelines on CCTV cameras, which would allow players from trusted locations to sell in India. Not just that, after India-China tensions escalated on the border along the line of actual control in 2020, New Delhi banned many Chinese apps because of national security concerns again. Indigenous production and implementation was strongly encouraged in a bid to reduce reliance on global firms. All said and done, it's hard to do without security gear, which explains the rising demand for such equipment in government and private offices, corporate houses, schools and residential areas. Over 250,000 CCTV cameras are installed in New Delhi, in India's national capital alone. And government measures like these can only be expected to offset the damage or the manipulations caused by these devices. Tensions in the South China Sea are rising once again, with a new show of force by Beijing. Satellite images from Maxar Technologies dating to the 19th of May may reveal the deployment of 2 Chinese H-6 bombers on a runway on Woody Island, located in the Paracel archipelago. Woody Island, known as Yongqing Dao in China, and Phu Lam Island in Vietnam is the largest of the Paracel Islands, a strategic outpost in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. The deployment of these long-range bombers marks the latest move in China's ongoing militarization of the region. In recent years, Beijing has transformed a string of small, uninhabited islands into military outposts, complete with airstrips, radar systems, and missile installations. China has built at least 27 such facilities all across the sprawling Spratly and Paracel Island groups areas that are also claimed by Vietnam, Taiwan, the Philippines, and Malaysia. These islands are an archipelago of over 130 reefs and coral islands located about 400 kilometers east of Vietnam and roughly 350 kilometers southeast of China's Hainan Island. These waters are not just strategically important, they are also believed to be rich in natural resources, including oil, gas, and fisheries. And this has now triggered a frenzied push by regional powers to secure and develop their own footholds in the disputed territory. Experts say that the latest sighting of bombers on Woody Island is likely intended as a signal to rival claimants and perhaps even to the United States, which regularly conducts freedom of navigation patrols in these contested waters. While Asia is arming up its skies and waters, they are now entering a new era of military dominance. Countries are spending on weapons and military research is spiking latest technology and advanced equipment. All of this is now being incorporated to beef up security measures and also broaden industrial partnerships. As per a new study, the conflicts in Ukraine and West Asia and the escalating tensions between the global superpowers US and China may have a major impact on the security landscape of the Asia Pacific. One that may give rise to a series of defense industrial partnerships, and its assessment is spot on. We'll tell you why in just a bit. The study says between 2022 and 2024, spending on defense procurement and research and development rose $2.7 billion to reach $10.5 billion among Southeast Asia's key nations of Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, thus marking a spike from earlier. Even as the nation spent an average of 1.5% of GDP on defense in 2024, they have been doing over the last decade or so. However, what this study also highlighted is the fact that most Asia-Pacific nations still rely on imports from most key weapons and equipment, ranging from submarines, combat aircraft to drones, missiles, and advanced electronics for surveillance and intelligence gathering. All this is only possible due to industrial help, which is now being drawn from other countries who are either the manufacturers or suppliers of these weapons or both. And examples of this are plenty. Let's start with the most immediate one. In the high-stakes India-Pakistan aerial clash that dominated headlines earlier, Pakistan used Chinese-supplied hypersonic missiles, more specifically the J-10C jets, as its mode of warfare. India too has used French-made Rafale fighter jets, as well as Russian Sukhoi Su-30 MKI fighter jets, S-400 missile systems, and portable shoulder-fired IGLAS missiles in its aerial combat. Not to forget, the BrahMos supersonic missile created in collaboration with Russia. India has also recently cleared its indigenous fifth-generation fighter jets, or AMCAs, in a bid to shore up its defense. And speaking of Rafale jets, just today, France and Indonesia have signed an initial defense pact that could lead to new orders of military equipment from Paris, including Rafale fighter jets and Scorpene submarines. This is a part of an $8.1 billion defense deal signed by both the countries in 2022, ordering over 40 Rafale aircraft as well as a series of agreements, including submarine development and ammunition as well.
To serve this vision, this partnership of sovereignty and these balances, we have consolidated in recent years an unprecedented bond in defense and security, and I am pleased that the letter of intent signed today can open up a new perspective with new orders for Rafale, Scorpion, and light frigates, as well as consolidated joint exercises. You recalled the importance of recent exercises, joint training, and here too, a stronger intimacy between our armed forces.
Well, just weeks ago, the US unveiled details about its upcoming 6th-generation fighter jet, the F-47, and its accompanying drone fleet, seen as a direct counter to China's own 6th-generation fighter prototypes, the J-36 and J-50. Apart from this, the annual Shangri-La Dialogue Defense Meet to be held in Singapore this weekend will also see industrial partners teaming up. Trump's security policies and the regional tension over Taiwan and the disputed busy waterway of the South China Sea will also be under discussion. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, or UAE, are increasingly making inroads even as European countries and companies have an upper hand in terms of regional dominance. This indicates an increasing pattern of collaboration and cooperation, which will seemingly dominate defense ties this decade. However, it's not without challenges, given the nature of exports of these weapons, the underlying strategy that guides such a tie-up, and the evolving geopolitical dynamics between countries. Russia-China ties warming up could change the game altogether for regional players, including India, which is where insights such as this can come handy for better preparedness. Game-changer political developments are taking place in Turkey, stirring deep controversy both inside and outside the country. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has appointed a team of legal experts to begin drafting a brand new constitution. This move, according to the president, is perhaps aimed at replacing what he calls an outdated and heavily military-influenced constitution, which was drafted following a military coup in 1980.
As of yesterday, I have assigned 10 legal experts to begin their work, and with this effort, we will proceed with the preparations for the new constitution. For 23 years, we have repeatedly demonstrated our sincere intention to crown our democracy with a new civilian and libertarian constitution.
But watchers see something far more calculated behind the move. Erdogan has governed Turkey for over 2 decades, first as a prime minister and then as president since 2014. And his latest decision adds fuel to the speculation that maybe Erdogan is maneuvering to stay in power well beyond 2028. That's the year his current term officially ends, under the existing constitutional rules. Under current law, Erdogan cannot legally run for office again unless early elections are triggered or the legal framework changes. A new constitution would conveniently pave the way for both scenarios, especially if the document rewrites the rule on term limits. But changing the constitution will not be easy because Erdogan and his party and its nationalist allies don't control enough seats in parliament to unilaterally push through a new constitution. That's where experts see a strategic pivot. Viewing Erdogan's recent moves towards resolving the conflict with the Kurdish militant group PKK might be aimed at winning the support of a pro-Kurdish party in parliament. Erdogan's aim to introduce a new constitution comes just months after Ekrem İmamoğlu, the popular mayor of Istanbul and Erdogan's key rival, was arrested and jailed on corruption charges. The arrest was widely viewed as politically motivated, sparking nationwide demonstrations. His arrest may have been timed to neutralize a key rival ahead of potential constitutional changes. Turkey is at a crossroad. Erdogan says he wants a new constitution, one that reflects universal freedoms. But critics warn that this could be the beginning of a long-term plan to entrench one-man rule, a forever president in Turkey. So what do you do when you board an aircraft? You fasten your seat belts. But what happens when the warning lights go off and one can finally unfasten those belt straps? Is this smooth sail from there on? You wish. Rather, it's a slow and tedious crawl, thanks to the crowd jamming the aisle moments after the flight lands. In a move to enforce what can be called airetiquates, Turkish aviation authorities have decided to fine passengers who stand up early and crowd aircraft aisles while waiting to deplane. And the charge can go as high as $70 per person. Reportedly, this is done in a bid not just to prevent overcrowding, but also as a mark of respect for fellow passengers, especially the elderly, as well as to ensure passengers' safety. As per the authorities, actions such as opening overhead bins before the plane has been parked are strictly forbidden and are prone to penalties. No surprises there really, but this is a common problem in air travel across the world, and some countries have strict measures against it, such as the US, where crowding the aisles is against its Federal Aviation Administration Code. Under a similar mandate, flight attendants are required to alert the captain if passengers are getting to their feet before the plane is parked. What about India? Unfortunately, no such rule has been enforced for the aisle crowders or for following other aircraft protocols for that matter, leaving passengers irritated and, of course, disgruntled. Among whom is Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah. Take his tweet, for example, where he seems to be complaining about the practice of airlines in India with regards to keeping shutters open or closed during takeoff and landing. Understand this, getting ahead of the queue or simply rushing towards the gate can only create more chaos and discomfort, and an exit strategy that literally nobody appreciates. Rather, lay back, sip on that coffee or finish your book and wait for your turn to come for a successful deplaning. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has a new way to prove if you are a robot or not. And no, it does not involve picking out blurry traffic lights. It is called the orb. It is a white sphere about the size of a beach ball with a camera at its center. The glowing eyeball of this device will scan yours, all in the name of verifying if you are a human or not. Designed to fit in the palm of your hand, the orb uses biometrics, specifically an iris scan, to confirm your humanity. And it's an idea that Sam Altman thinks should be implemented in real life as well. So how does this actually work? First, you need to stare into the heart of the plastic and silicon globe. Then it will map the unique furrows and ciliary zones of your iris. Seconds later, you will receive proof of your humanity, which is a 12,800-digit binary number known as an iris code. And that will be sent to an app on your phone. The goal of this device is to solve a problem partly of Altman's own making. In the near future, he and other tech leaders say that advanced AI, artificial intelligence, will be imbued with agency, which means that AI will not only be responding to human prompting, but will also be able to take action independently in the world, especially when AI can generate books, deepfake voices, and dating profiles with ease. Hence, Sam Altman and the company claims that lack of trust is one of the most urgent crises of the modern internet. And the world now needs a way for identifying and authenticating humans in the age of AI. So, in a world where AI can write your essays, deepfake your face and your voice, and chat like your best friend, the question isn't who is real, but how do you prove it? If you hate tidying up your home, a team at Stanford may have built your dream assistant. It's called Tidybot. It's an AI-powered robot that learns how you like your space organized. Manufactured by robotics researchers at Stanford University, Tidybot is a rolling robotic arm that uses AI, artificial intelligence, including large language models, to learn and execute household chores. Tidybot learns tasks through imitation, demonstrate an action once, like sorting white laundry into a hamper, and it remembers.
So my robot is called Tidybot, and Tidybot, just like the name says, is actually tidying up your place, hopefully. So the idea is that Tidybot comes to your home, and of course in your home, things go into particular places, right? Like you have particular preferences of where things belong in your place. And so that robot doesn't know that in advance, so you would want to show it where things go. And so imagine you're just taking the robot by the hand in a way, and they're just showing like, here, this thing goes over here, and this thing goes over here. And the white clothes, they go into this hamper. And, this can goes into the recycling over there.
Controlled through a smartphone, it mimics the user's hand gestures to perform pick and place operations, stamping pamphlets, even putting away trash. And unlike your average robot vacuum, this one can do more than just sweep. Co-developed by assistant professor Janet Bong and visiting Princeton student Jimmy Wu, Tidybot was recently unveiled at an event celebrating 100 years of Stanford engineering. The goal? Full autonomy, with the potential for 2 arms or even an entire team of Tidybots from laundry to countertops. Tidybot is a part of a broader trend in robotics that is aiming to bring AI-powered assistants into homes. For example, Tesla's Optimus robot, it has been demonstrated performing household tasks like cooking and cleaning, indicating a future where robots handle more complex chores. Further, companies like Roborock and EcoWax are also advancing in this space, making robots that can navigate homes, avoid obstacles, and perform tasks like vacuuming and mopping with increasing efficiency. So as technology continues to evolve, robots like the Tidybot may become common household items, handling daily work and giving people more time for other activities. Yes, challenges remain, such as affordability and, more importantly, user trust. But it looks like the future of home cleaning is undoubtedly leaning towards intelligent automation. Well, that's all that we could pack for you in today's edition of Gravitas. We're slipping into a very short break, but stay with us. You are watching WION World is One. Stay tuned.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. climate tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia